welcome to the latest episode of Can I Kick It?
Yes, you can.
This is your host, Elliot Barr, and joining me as always...
Shanir Duran II.
What's going on, man? You good?
Oh, I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
I'm doing all right.
So, on today's podcast, we are covering the latest superstar on our list, Wendie Renard, the French center back.
Captain of the French team as well?
Well, she's my captain regardless. The fact that she got stripped for an odd reason, she's still my center. She's still my captain.
Yeah, for me, if I'm picking that French women's team, she's captaining it no matter what.
Yeah. All right. So before we hop into this podcast, let me ask you the question: did you have a hard time finding a lot of information about her?
There are a lot of holes in the story, and it took a lot of digging to find to try and fill some of those holes.
Yeah, I found that out a lot. I mean, outside of like why she didn't make it in Clairefontaine, so we kind of got that, but it's a little murky. Like why was she stripped of the captaincy? You know, things like that are a little murky. You can kind of see the details, but it's kind of hard to speculate one way or another. But I think it's like a part of the bigger issue when it comes to covering women's soccer. I mean, granted, you have those who cover like Meg Linehan and who covers NWSL, but I think outside of that, like a lot of the stories that we saw written about her, it only happened because of the World Cup the Women's World Cup was happening in France, and it was part of this last year. Like it was okay. Let me throw this out there. Imagine a player that was on the men's FIFA World 11 for a record-setting 4 times in a row, won I think 12 league titles in her career, won 5 Champions League, scored 102 goals as a center back, made over 300 appearances, and made over 100 caps. We would hear no end of that player.
Yeah.
Right?
No, we wouldn't. We wouldn't. And that's why we haven't heard the end, even though his career as a player has been over. We haven't heard the end of Zinedine Zidane. We haven't heard the end of...
Like, I'm still hearing stories
Thierry
about
Henry,
Pele and things
Maradona.
like that, but it's like a player like Wendie Renard, who granted, like, she had one of the most amazing World Cups. She scored 4 goals.
As a center back. Let me just remind everyone, as a center back, where your job is to prevent goals from coming into your goal, she still managed to do that and still score 4.
The thing about it is she had her own goal and still scored. Like, you know? So we're going to give her just due on this podcast.
Yeah, we're definitely going to try.
And I know this podcast means a lot to you because you are from the islands. You know, you're Haiti and whatnot. She's from Martinique, but correct me if I'm wrong, Haiti and Martinique kind of share a lot of similarities in the fact of
culture,
like
language,
and things like that, right?
Yes, culture, language, and a lot of different things. It's really interesting seeing that she came from Martinique, and the thing with Martinique, and there's one thing that she referred to in the Players' Tribune, life at the end of the world, and they call Martinique the end of the world because it's one of the islands on that archipelago that literally borders the Caribbean Sea. So literally on that island, all you see around you is ocean. So, but with that being said, to know that you come from a place that it's called that and to still have dreams and hopes of... And it's funny how in this article you really see that from day one, from when she was a little kid, she said, I'm going to be a professional soccer player. Even though around that time the women's game was nowhere near as big and as evolved as it is now, and she still had that dream. So...
yeah, like, I think her story is so much more about perseverance and like getting to keep improving herself and, you know, showing to everyone like, hey, this is who I am. I ain't gonna lie, like, in low key, for those who not, like, once you finish listening to this podcast, go read her backstory. Like, go do research on Wendie Renard and it will inspire you because of what she's doing. Like, first and foremost, like we said, like, she was born and raised on Martinique. But she was already going through tragedies and everything. Like, she lost her dad at the age of 8 due to cancer. But that kind of, like, kickstarted her to even then be like... she said it in the Player Tribune article about how she knew at that moment that her mother and dad would not always be there for her, so she had to kind of already knew, like, I have to rely on myself. Mm-hmm. Not like push them to the side, but I know, like, hey, I'm gonna have to rely on myself.
They're not gonna always be here.
Yeah, to get things done.
And you know what's interesting though is how the mind works, because according to this article, it's more so of an interview with her. She was saying that her father wasn't really into soccer that much.
Yeah,
he was more of a he wanted to talk politics.
Yeah,
her mom was the one who would sit down and watch games with her.
It was the women in her family that kind of like were already playing soccer, and she also mentioned it about how she had to toughen up and get better because she was playing against boys.
Yeah. And
she was like, it got to the point that she was playing so well that the boys on the island were just like, oh yeah, we want Wendie on it. Yep. Like that's what it was.
She was the first pick.
Yeah, exactly.
When you go out on the recess yard, on the dirt lot out back, and y'all start a game, I get first pick, Wendie.
Yeah, exactly. But then like, so she leaves the island of Martinique, and I'm gonna let you pronounce the youth team that she was with.
The youth team that she was with.
It was Escar Prichona? I'm gonna let you pronounce it because you're from that part.
Eso Préchontin.
There you go. That's why I have you on this podcast. But yeah, like that was the YouTube school. So she leaves them, goes to France. And this is what I found interesting. Why, normally when you hear players talk about like Virgil van Dijk or Daniel Sturridge or Raheem Sterling, they're kind of already born into that country, but they have the background of being Jamaican, current side, things like that.
Yes.
She's from the island of Martinique, which I think makes her story more unique and more genuine. She goes to France.
Yeah, she stays there until she's 15, until 2006. Yeah. So she was born in, just to give you guys a picture of this, she was born in 1990. Yeah. So she's 15 years old, almost 16 years old, when she actually moves to France, because she goes there to try out for Clairefontaine.
That's the only French team I can say properly. I struggle with English names and I struggle with French, so I keep
Yeah, no, Clairefontaine. And the interesting thing with the Clairefontaine tryouts is she obviously does not get picked. From the Tribune, the Player Tribune article, it lends itself based off of what she said with regards to the coaches not even talking to her, not even looking at her during the tryouts. Yeah. It points to a lot of the issues that there are in soccer, and for at once I thought it was only happening here in the United States, but according to this is something that happens all around the world, of the conundrum of favorites. Already having favorites in your mind as a tryout coach, as a scout, and being completely blind to the new faces. And I think it's one thing that I have witnessed myself firsthand as a coach. I've witnessed players that I've coached trying out for another team and seeing the coaches at the tryouts not pay them any attention because they don't know them. So now Wendie Renard, coming from a situation where she was known as that girl that plays soccer, going into a situation where it's nobody knew her, she basically was ignored completely by the Clairefontaine coaches, and because they already had some that they had been scouting, and this tryout was basically a formality for a lot of them probably, and so thankfully. Is it one of her coaches?
Yeah, it was her youth coach, Farad Bastidi. Pretty much was like, after the Clairefontaine trial didn't go well, she got on the train and went to Lyon and tried out for Olympic Lyonnais. And they were like, all right, we'll bring you on. But even then, you would think, like, all right, now she's met this pinnacle. She's at this club in France where she wanted to be. She also credits, like, the reason why she fell in love with the French national team was due to Martinique Pacina. I want to say her name is I'll let you pronounce it again.
Martinette Pichon.
Okay. Once again, I struggle with French names. I'm trying. And like, I want y'all to know that I practiced these names for 15 minutes before we started the podcast, and I'm still struggling with it. I practiced. But like, that was her inspiration of why she wanted to be with the French national team and everything like that. But even when she's at Lyonnais, it's not like she's the glorified number one. We're not moving anyone else into the position. She even mentioned about how they will bring in other players to be like, oh, we want, to kind of surpass her. And she was like, she just took it as motivation. It's kind of like the thing of like Jordan, where he will make up rivalries in his head. Yeah. Like, I think the famous rivalry he made up was with, I can't remember the guy who played for the Washington Wizards, but they played a back-to-back against the Washington Wizards. And for those who seen the ESPN documentary, you know what we're talking about. Yes, yeah. About the Washington Wizards player dropped 30 on him. And he said, good game. And Jordan made a rivalry in his head and dropped 50 on him the next night. Just to prove, like, yo, you're not better than me. Yep. And that's kind of like the same thing I see with her about how she created these rivalries. Not saying she did it, like, just to have something to be spiteful about, but, like, it kept her motivated. But then also wanted to show people back in Martinique, like, hey, even if you come to France or wherever you go, you can make it. Exactly. You can be, you don't have to feel like you're less than. Yeah. Yeah. That's the most inspirational thing I've seen so far about her.
Yeah, she definitely shows a lot of grit. And granted, you can always make the argument that it was probably a masterful stroke by the coach to do that, to keep her on her toes. Yeah. Because you've seen that a lot. I mean, a lot of people may not realize that for the longest, like, for example, I'm going to give an example, David De Gea, young goalkeeper, taking over from Edwin van der Sar, but who's the backup? Who's been the backup keeper for Manchester United for years now? An international, like a big name. Yeah. A big name goalkeeper. So that's someone behind, but like breathing down your neck, like, you better not mess up, you better not mess up, you better not mess up, because if I take over, I'm holding that spot. Yeah. Because he definitely had the ability to take that spot from David De Gea, but David De Gea just had to keep his performance up. To keep Wendie Renard on form, all of these players are being brought in. It could be because of that, or it could be that they felt they needed to replace her, but she always proved to them, no, you do not.
Yeah, and it wasn't like Wendie Renard is a slouch of a player. Like, she's made, and looking at this right, 6-time Champions League winner, 14-time French league winner, 343 appearances for the club, and 102 goals scored. Mind you, again, she's a center back. It's not like she's a fullback, and not like she plays center defensive mid. No, she is strictly a center back.
Scoring a goal almost every two games as a center back. I don't think even Sergio Ramos has that kind of
and the thing is, like,
consistency.
She doesn't even, like, most people, when you think about it, and we watched her highlights, and you would think, like, the first thing you think of, like, oh, she's almost like 6'9", like, oh, she's just towering over everyone else. Yeah. No, she doesn't even accredit that. She just accredits to the fact that she sits there and breaks down film, so she knows when and where to make her runs. Yep. You know, and
that's one thing I did notice, because I heard a lot about her before the Women's World Cup, like right before the Women's World Cup. Mm-hmm. And so when I was watching France, I was like, okay, I need to watch her, because she's a big name. She's she's had the captaincy. She's talked about a lot. Like, you would hear the commentators mentioning her a lot and telling her backstory a lot during the games. And when I was watching her, you could see she would pick apart. So even though she's 6'2", she's towering over everyone, she's not using that as her primary weapon in the game. Her mind was her primary weapon, and it's interesting to see when you would see most players would just go lean back on the fact that I'm big, I'm tall, I'll bully you in the air. Yeah. You know?
No, it's like really like graceful. Like, you can see her kind of like make a run towards the near post, and then she'll just fade away slowly and be the back post.
Yep.
Like it's runs like that, like stuff that like you wouldn't necessarily think of in the moment, but she does it.
Yeah.
And like I think even that, like, you know, she's not paying for a bump to you. Like, you could say outside of North Carolina Courage, she's plays for one of the top women's club teams. Like the other ones I can think of is probably Manchester City.
Yeah, Manchester
Chelsea,
City women's and Chelsea
Arsenal. I know there's a
but
couple.
Lyonnaise is up there.
Yeah, they're up there. Like I think it's also like Norway.
Yeah,
for example.
Norway
I can't remember the name of the clubs, but they're like up there. But she plays for one of the top club teams. Like, and she is legit. Like, she's legit. Like that. Like, it's not enough adjective to describe. But she's legit.
So far with Olympique Lyonnaise, she has in the league, I think, 177 appearances. 63 goals. Yeah,
and there's not including Champions League and stuff.
Exactly. You add the Champions League and
dominated. Like, but she's been the cornerstone of that team.
Yeah,
and they also
Olympique Lyonnaise. I think how many times have they won it in the past? Like,
I think
years?
6. They might have won it like 1 or 2 times without her. Like before she made the team. But since she's been there, she's been there. Like she's been the cornerstone. And then the other thing about it, like for the French national team, which she made her debut in the 2011. Cyprus Cup, which if I had to equate it to what a men's tournament would be, I want to say it's on the level of maybe like a Confederations Cup,
probably,
but it's like a more like it's a better version of Confederations Cup.
Yeah,
to be honest with you.
Yeah. Would you put it on the level? I think it would probably be put higher. At a higher level than like the She Believes Cup. Yeah, because the She Believes Cup is more so.
I think the She Believes Cup
exhibition tournament.
Yeah, to me, I would say the She Believes Cup is still preseason like friendly-ish, but it's like took it as a serious tournament. Where like Cyprus Cup, we watched it on beIN Sports. Like it's a seriously like legit tournament.
Yeah.
But she made her debut there against Switzerland. And then 2 years later, she becomes the captain.
Yeah.
Now, 2017, she gets stripped of captaincy, and Deacon, who was the coach at the time, pretty much just gave the reason to allow her to refocus on individual performances. For what me and you research, and I'm just going to speak for me, I didn't see anything that might have dipped to her performances. It's not like there's a lot of highlight film out there to really like see.
There is, but when you look at the stats, there doesn't seem to be a dip in performance.
Yeah. And it's not like it's not like she's a striker, so you can see, oh, she went this number of games without scoring a goal, giving an assist. Or like it's a center attack where she went this number of games without giving off an important pass or something. Like as a center back, your job is pretty much keep a clean sheet.
Yeah. Keep a clean sheet. Don't get beat.
Yeah, the 3 main things is
keep everybody in front of you with the ball.
And I can speak about this. Keep a clean sheet. Don't get a yellow or red card. Don't give up a stupid foul in the area. Like those, if you do that as a center back, you're a good center back. Yeah. You've done your job.
Yeah, basically. Like if you, for example, look at a player like John Terry. Yeah, he scored quite a few goals in his career, but at the end of the day, he was the enforcer in the back, and that's what you need to be. That's it for a center back. That's all you need. And one thing that also did not change was her distribution out of the back. Like her passing rate, all of that didn't really take a dip or anything because, of course, now the game evolved to a point. And I would say,
and there were so many
times in the early 2000s, the game evolved to the point where the center backs basically, when you win the ball back, center backs are distributing the ball up the field. But
and there's like a point in time, like granted, we're watching highlights, so you know they're only going to show you the best of what this player can do. They're not going to show you the dips and downs. Yeah. But even her passing was legit. Like it was so many times she'd have the ball, and she'll just calmly just ping it out to the right flank.
She knew when to go long, knew when to go short.
Yeah, and like she was controlling possession that way. I mean,
from what it seems to me, that seems to me a bit like a cop-out excuse as to why she was taking.
Yeah, I mean, it might have been like I didn't really check.
I feel like there's something behind.
Yeah, it might be something. But once again, like there's no way we can research it and really figure out the reason. Yeah. It's kind of like coaches made their decision, and maybe like it's a national team. Like maybe you want to go in a different direction. But I think leading up, like once Wendie got stripped of being captain, there were like 3 other captains until they settled on the captain they had for the tournament. Yeah. Which I don't know why. we probably would never figure out the reason for that. But once again, like even playing for France, it's not like she's not doing her job. She still scored 20 goals, like we alluded to. She scored 4 goals at the latest Women's World Cup in 2017. She scored 4 goals.
Yeah.
I mean, she had her best game against South Korea. She scored 2 goals in that game. And I think, the reason why she was such a forefront, granted, the tournament was in France, but I think also just because of who she was as a player and what she was doing.
The funny thing, and so I'm just trying to remember who was the captain for this last World Cup. Was it Le Sommer?
I think so. I think Le Sommer was the captain.
Okay. It's not. I mean, at the end of the day, what was she, a midfielder? Yeah. But to be honest with you, it is what it is. What you gonna do? But still, and strangely enough, teammate.
Yeah,
at the Olympique Lyonnais, of course. I mean, I do feel that the Olympique Lyonnais would be the Barcelona of France.
I don't say I'd say they're Real Madrid.
The Barcelona / Real Madrid. I'm saying like most. If you look at the Spain team, the majority of that team is Barcelona / Real Madrid. So like Olympique Lyonnais is where most of the French national team comes from.
But like if you had to equate, and I don't want to equate like. Giving them a comparison, but Olympique Lyonnais is the closest that you're going to see to Real Madrid's men's football in women's soccer. Like they are a true global powerhouse.
Oh, they are. They are.
Like they're that team that can walk into any girl's house and be like, "We want you, play for us." And like that's how it works for them.
Yeah,
but. I mean, the other thing that's cool about Wendie Renard is the fact that she is, I think, the only woman to show up on the FIFA Women's World 11 4 times in a row. Like, the latest team she was on was 2019. On that team, this is who's on that team for 2019. Lucy Bronze, Nyla Fisher, Kelly O'Hara, Wendie Renard, of course, Julie Ertz, Amanda Kenny, Rose Lavelle, Marta, Alex Morgan, Megan Rapinoe. We know all of them.
We know all of them. And most of them are USA's top players. And of course, we all know USA ran away with that World Cup.
Yeah. And a parallel universe somewhere out there, Wendie Renard is not watching the French national team play. She's watching the women's national team play.
The U.S. women's national team.
And she goes to the U.S. and she's our center back.
Oh,
in a perfect world.
See, that's not fair.
I know. In a perfect world, that would happen. But, I mean,
to be honest with you, that I think that would actually cause an issue. Because if you look at USA's center backs, they are solid. So... What, do we go with a back 3?
As long as she's in it, I don't care. But anything else to you before we wrap up?
Not really. At the end of the day, I think Wendie Renard is the epitome of the never say die attitude. She had a lot of setbacks in her life and her childhood, but she never let any of it destroy her. She always felt that she needed to be 3-4 times better than those that she was competing with, for the simple fact that she was the unknown entity. She was some girl from Martinique who came to France, and because of that, she knew that she had to try harder, and she had the mental strength. And it's funny that we use this term again, because in our last podcast with regards to DeMarcus Beasley, we talked a lot about his mental strength, and there is that similarity here with Wendie Renard, that mental strength to keep going.
Yeah.
And hats off to her.
Yes. And I think the quote that most represents who she is as a person is she talks about how a lot of people used to pick her by her higher accent because she's from Martinique and from France, and how French people, and you even spoke about it as well, about how people will kind of look down upon you if you're not from the country of France itself.
Yes.
And she mentions about how it's mine, I own it. When I get irritated, my roots come back very, very quickly, and the accent comes back with them. I think it's beautiful. I'm proud of my roots. And that pretty much immediately sums up, either you're going to love me or you're going to hate me, but I'm going to be me regardless.
Yeah, it's funny. And I just picture a player like Raheem Sterling or Daniel Sturridge in the locker room, and a heated conversation comes up, and he goes from that South London accent to the straight Jamaican patois. And that's basically, if you can picture that, that's the English equivalent to what Wendie Renard is talking about with regards to her accent coming out when she gets emotional, when she gets upset. And I can attest to it because the Boston comes out of me when I get pissed off.
I've witnessed it. Not at me directly, but I witnessed
the Boston really comes out of me, and it's something that I've embraced as well. And and it's something.
The same thing with me, like the New York accent comes out of me.
Yeah, it's something that I'm glad that as an individual and as a woman, especially with how critical the public eye is towards women, that she does not let that phase her. That's who I am. That's how I speak. That's that's what I do.
Yeah.
So,
and like also I want to say like it has to be more coverage on her because of like she has such a dope, incredible story. And I know we've been talking about her story, but it's so inspirational to see. Like it gives you that courage of knowing like you get like she doesn't even hold it as if like I come from this place where nothing went right in my life and I was fighting against all these odds and obstacles. Mm-hmm. But going to the new country, having to prove myself day in and day out and overcoming that is like something that we can really relate to.
Yes.
So I want to see more stories on Wendie Renard.
I do too.
Like I do too. On her.
I do too. Hey, journalists out there, let's go. Let's get more stories on her because she is a wonderful, wonderful image in the women's soccer, on the women's soccer stage.
So since you did sources last episode, I'm gonna do them this time for you.
All right.
For sources, in this podcast, we got Wendie Renard, Never Stop Dreaming by Omri Tancman. French defender Wendie Renard, Improbable Journey to the World Cup, in her own words, by Bonnie D. Ford of ESPN. Blue, Corinne Deacon chooses Amandine Henry as captain by lequipe, and Players Tribune, Wendie Renard's journey to the FIFA's World Cup. So, in the words of our famous First Lady, history has shown us that courage can be contagious and hope can take on a life of its own, by Michelle Obama. And I think that pretty much wraps up who Wendie Renard was as a person. So, from Elliot,
from Shanair,
this is Can I Kick It? And we'll catch you guys next time, alright?